Hey, Soul Stories fam. We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? The 12-hour shift had just ended, and Eleanor felt like her entire body was made of soggy dough. She yanked her hair into a messy bun, checking herself in the car's rearview mirror. Dark circles like a panda, hair sticking out everywhere, a white coat splattered with coffee, and a bright streak of ketchup from lunch at 3 in the afternoon? Or maybe 3 in the morning. She couldn't remember anymore. After a shift that long, time seemed to stand still. All she wanted now was to go home, hug her pillow, and sleep like the dead. But her growling stomach reminded her she'd probably demolished the ice cream tub in the fridge before passing out on the couch. Her old Honda grumbled as it crawled up the empty bridge. The city was asleep at this late hour. Eleanor flicked on the radio, hoping for some soft jazz, but instead the DJ's voice boomed with a pizza ad. Buy one, get one free. Delivery until 2 a.m. Well, fantastic. Now I'm both exhausted and starving, she muttered, drumming her fingers on the steering wheel. Then she saw it. A sleek black sedan sat crooked in the middle of the bridge, hazard lights flashing, like a distress signal in the night. Eleanor frowned. Luxury car, dead engine, in the middle of the bridge? At this godforsaken hour? She clicked her tongue. Please don't let it be zombies. I don't have enough caffeine left to fight them. Even as she grumbled, muscle memory and instinct took over. Eleanor slowed and pulled to the side. The sedan gleamed like it had just rolled off a commercial. She rapped on the window. No response. She bent lower, and her heart clenched. A man in a dark suit was slumped over the wheel. Oh no! She tried the door handle. Locked. Of course it was. Fancy car, fancy problems. Exhaling sharply, she hurried back to her Honda, popped the trunk, and grabbed a small orange emergency hammer. ER doctors never traveled without a few life-saving toys. Sorry, Mr. Fancy Pants, she whispered. I don't have time for polite knocking. She aimed for the corner of the rear window and swung. Crash! Glass shattered into a spray of glittering shards, raining down on the pavement like midnight fireworks. Eleanor slipped her hand through, popped the lock from the inside. The door gave way. She climbed halfway onto the seat, checking his pulse. Still beating, but weak. His skin was pale, his forehead damp with sweat. Exhaustion. Probably blood pressure is bottoming out. Don't you dare die on my shoes, she muttered, dragging him back against the seat. I just washed these. She grabbed a cloth, soaked it with cold water, pressed it to his forehead, then dug into her personal first aid kit. Snapping open a tube of glucose gel, she eased it against his lips. Come on, taste a little sugar. I promise it's not as bad as hospital coffee. A faint groan slipped out. Eleanor leaned closer. Good. Hear me? You just passed out from exhaustion. I've already called emergency services. If you're planning on collapsing again, wait until after they get here, okay? His eyelids fluttered. Long lashes trembled. His gaze was hazy, unfocused, but her voice reached him. In the fog, it was a thread pulling him back from the dark. Eleanor clicked on a small flashlight, shining it into his eyes. Yeah, that's better. You're coming around. Keep breathing steady. If you pass out again, don't blame me when I haul you to the ER and let a rookie nurse practice IVS on you. The corner of his lips twitched. Whether reflex or the ghost of a smile, she couldn't tell. Sirens wailed in the distance, then grew closer, flashing red and blue across the bridge. Eleanor waved them down, quickly relaying what she knew. The paramedics transferred him onto a stretcher, running their own checks. As they prepared to load him up, Eleanor stepped back, brushing her hands off, already picturing her bed and that ice cream waiting at home. Her job here was done. She turned to leave, but something made her glance back. His eyes, clearer now, were fixed on her, not panicked, but clinging, like someone who had found a fragile anchor in the storm. Eleanor shrugged. All right, stranger. I've done my part. The rest is up to them. She slid back into her Honda, started the engine, and drove away. She had no idea the man she just saved wasn't some random businessman. He was Alexander Pierce, the most notorious billionaire in the city, the one the press called the Cold Wolf of Wall Street. The night was still silent, but that bridge had just witnessed the beginning of a story no one could have predicted. The steady beeping of the monitor pulled Alexander back to consciousness. His eyelids were heavy, his throat parched. The harsh white light of the hospital room made him squint. The familiar smell of antiseptic lingered everywhere. A sharp headache throbbed. He winced, sinking into the pillow. What the hell happened? Then he remembered. The bridge, the racing heartbeat, the body giving way, and a woman's voice, warm, with a hint of sarcasm. "Don't you dare die on my shoes. I just washed them." Alexander, who had never let anyone speak to him that way, felt the corner of his mouth twitch. The door swung open. A nurse walked in, checked the machines, and adjusted the IV bag. "Mr. Pierce, the doctor will be here shortly. You passed out from exhaustion and lack of sleep. Luckily, someone found you in time." "Where is that person?" Alexander asked hoarsely. The nurse smiled faintly. "She's still in the hospital." "An ER doctor. You can thank her in person." Alexander nodded, leaning back into the pillow, eyes fixed on the door. Just a few hours later, the hospital buzzed with activity. The press had already caught wind. Cold CEO collapses on bridge at midnight. Photos of the luxury sedan stranded in the middle of the road were spreading online. His assistant, a young man with slick-back hair and a phone glued to his hand, arrived quickly, tense. "Mr. Pierce, the media is blowing this up. Don't worry, I'll draft a statement. We'll say you were just dehydrated." Alexander raised a brow but said nothing. He didn't care what the headlines were. The only thing he cared about was finding that voice again. That afternoon, fate arrived sooner than he expected. Eleanor stepped into the hospital room with a folder in hand, hair still slightly messy, white coat freshly thrown on after her shift. She was about to pass by, but her eyes caught on the special patient. He was sitting up now, eyes alert, looking far better. Eleanor stopped, arching a brow. "Well, so you're the guy who hates sleeping, huh?" Alexander blinked, then laughed. A short, genuine laugh that even surprised him. How long had it been since he laughed like that? Eleanor flushed slightly. She hadn't meant to be funny. The words just slipped out, pure reflex after too many overnight shifts. "Thank you," Alexander said, voice low and rough, "for not leaving me on that bridge." Eleanor shrugged. "Don't thank me. It's my job. Someone's about to hit the pavement, I step in. Besides, who would let an expensive suit just drop dead in the middle of the road?" He chuckled again. Her bluntness hit before he could put up walls. "Honestly, you're the first person to ever talk to me like that," he admitted. "No fear, no hesitation." "What's there to be afraid of?" Eleanor asked genuinely. Alexander held her gaze a moment longer. He didn't say it out loud, but in his mind the answer echoed, "Because I'm Alexander Pierce, the name half this city fears." Their exchange was cut short when his assistant barged in. "Mr. Pierce, the press conference." Alexander lifted a hand, silencing him. He turned back to Eleanor. "I want to know your name." "Eleanor Hayes," she replied simply. "Dr. Hayes if you want to be formal. However, I don't accept flowers or chocolates as a thank you. Next time, try sleeping 8 hours instead of collapsing on a bridge. That's the best way to repay me." He sat still, watching her walk away, her voice lingering in his mind. "No flowers, no chocolates. Just, live like a normal human being." Outside, the hospital corridor echoed with footsteps and announcements over the PA system. Eleanor leaned against the wall, sighing. God, why had she blurted that out? And yet, deep down, she felt lighter. He might be a billionaire, a CEO, or whatever title the world has given him. But under the fluorescent hospital lights, he was just a man worn down, a patient she had once pulled back from the brink. She shrugged and smiled faintly. If he really wanted to repay her, then yes, he could start by getting a full night's sleep like everyone else. The news of Alexander Pierce collapsing on the bridge was still hot. Headlines blared with photos of the sleek black sedan. The Cold Wolf collapses. Most articles blamed work stress. Some spiced it up with excessive drinking. But no one really knew what had happened. Meanwhile, Alexander didn't care. What occupied his thoughts far more was the woman who had saved him, Eleanor Hayes. Right after being discharged, he had his assistant send a formal invitation. Mr. Pierce cordially invites Dr. Hayes to dinner at Whitmore Rooftop at 8 p.m. tonight in gratitude for saving his life. Eleanor read it and burst out laughing so hard that the on-duty nurse beside her stared as if she'd lost her mind. She texted back a single line, "Not coming. Rooftop dining doesn't suit someone who just collapsed from lack of sleep. Go to bed instead." Alexander read the message, stunned. No one had ever dared say no to him, let alone tell him to go to sleep. Instead of anger, curiosity stirred. That night, Eleanor had just finished her shift, white coat tied around her waist, stepping out of the hospital gate, when she spotted a familiar sleek black car parked at the curb. Alexander stood there, no suit, no tie, just a simple white shirt. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor asked, frowning. "Waiting for you," he replied evenly. "I wanted to thank you in person and invite you to dinner." "Didn't you get it?" I said no. Eleanor folded her arms. "I'm tired. I'm hungry, and I am not in the mood for some glittering rooftop with wine glasses." Alexander drew a slow breath. "Then give me another chance. No rooftop, no wine, just dinner wherever you want." She arched a brow, half annoyed, half amused. "Are you always used to making people do what you want?" "Maybe," he admitted without hesitation. "But tonight I just want to have dinner with you. Anywhere. Your choice." Eleanor stayed silent for a few seconds. The patience in his eyes, the way he looked straight at her, softened her a little. Fine. Maybe the sleep-deprived patient deserved a dose of ordinary life. "All right," she sighed, "follow me." Just a short walk away, Eleanor led him to a row of brightly lit food trucks outside the hospital. The air smelled of fried onions, grilled meat, and mustard. Medics, outpatients, and even a few cops were lined up. Alexander hesitated. "Here?" "Exactly." "This is the right place," Eleanor crossed her arms, smirking. "No white tablecloths, no jazz band, just hot dogs and fries. Think you can survive?" Alexander chuckled, for once not in control of the situation. "Let's find out." They sat on a wobbly plastic chair and a scratched-up metal table. Alexander shrugged off his jacket and unbuttoned his collar. He almost felt like he was in disguise as a normal man. Eleanor handed him a hot dog. "Here, my $1 million dinner." He took a bite. Instantly, a bright streak of mustard shot out, splattering across his crisp white sleeve. Eleanor burst out laughing so hard she nearly choked. "Sorry," she said between giggles, handing him napkins. "You just ruined your shirt. But hey, you've officially joined the Real People Eat Messy Club." Alexander glanced at the stain, then at her laughing face. Instead of irritation, he laughed too, a real full laugh echoing through the night. They ate under neon lights and the noise of traffic. Eleanor told stories from her shifts. The old man who dialed 911 because his cat was stuck in a tree, or the kid who swallowed a Lego and laughed when the doctors retrieved it. Alexander listened and, for the first time, felt his chest lighten. No stock prices, no deals. Just silly, ordinary stories, brimming with life. "You know," Eleanor said, finishing her fries, "sometimes I think real value isn't in money. Just seeing a patient open their eyes, or a child stop crying, that's enough to know the day was worth it." Alexander stayed silent. He'd never thought that way. For him, success was rising stock charts and crushed rivals. But when he saw the spark in her eyes, he realized there was another definition of victory. When they finished, Eleanor stood, clapping her hands. "Well, that's your thank you dinner. No rooftop, no champagne, just hot dogs and mustard. You survived. Not bad." Alexander rose too, jacket in hand, looking at her in the glow of the streetlights. For a fleeting moment, he felt human. "Thank you," he said softly. "Not just for saving me. For this too." "Go get some sleep," Eleanor winked. "Don't make me find you on that bridge again." That night, Alexander returned to his luxury penthouse. The glass walls offered a view of the glittering cityscape, but the silence didn't feel comforting anymore. He unbuttoned his sleeve, the faint mustard stain still there. A laugh escaped his lips, echoing in a place usually filled with nothing but quiet. The image of Eleanor, messy hair, laughing, holding a hot dog, lingered in his mind. No champagne, no fine dining. And yet, it was the most memorable dinner of his life. Sitting alone, Alexander Pierce, for the first time in years, didn't feel completely alone. Alexander came to the hospital with a very ordinary goal: to invite Eleanor out for coffee. No rooftops, no wine, no private jets, just coffee. The language he suspected was the mother tongue of night shift doctors. He carried 2 cups from a corner cafe, the kind with paper lids, steam vents, and a smell strong enough to wake the dead. Standing at the reception desk, he felt oddly out of place. It had been a long time since he'd been in a world where the rule was stand in line first, talk about life later. In his world, people lined up to see him. Here, he lined up to see her. "Who are you here for?" the night nurse asked, her voice tired but sweet. "Dr. Hayes, I'm a friend." The word surprised him. It sounded right. The nurse glanced at the 2 coffees and gave him a little good luck smile. "She's in the ER, but she's on shift. If you're lucky, you'll catch her sprinting through here in the next 2.5 seconds. Alexander thanked her, stepped aside, still holding the cups. Not even a minute later, those 2.5 seconds materialized. Eleanor flew down the hallway, ponytail bouncing, white coat tied at her waist, clipboard under one arm, stethoscope swinging like jewelry. She stopped when she spotted him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, raising a brow, then gaping at the 2 steaming cups in his hands. "I came to buy you coffee." Alexander lifted one. "Less sugar, more milk," I guessed. "Half right." Eleanor smiled, then pointed at the wall clock. "Too bad. I've got 2 more hours left on shift." "Coffee, I'll take." "Company, not allowed. Rule number 1 of the ER, no dating on duty." "I'm not dating," he blurted, then quickly added, "I mean, not like that." "Not like any kind." She took a sip, her eyes fluttering shut for a moment, as if her soul had just been recharged. "Go home. I'll text you in 2 hours. "I'll wait," Alexander said instantly, with the same snap as when he closed a business deal. Eleanor blinked. "Wait? Here? Here?" She studied him for a beat, as if diagnosing the severity of a stubborn patient. "Suit yourself. But don't get in the way. Don't ask dumb questions. And if I start running, step aside." "I'll step aside," he promised solemnly. "Good." She raised the cup, backed away, and disappeared into the stream of scrubs. 2 hours can fly by during a TV episode, but they crawl when you're sitting on a hard plastic ER chair. Alexander opened his laptop, then shut it again. He watched the clock, the footsteps, the faces, a patchwork of worry, fatigue, and hope stitched together like an old quilt that was still warm. The first patient he witnessed was a drunk man in a crumpled shirt, neon wristband dangling from a nightclub. He belted out an off-key country song, voice rasping like sandpaper. Eleanor appeared with a nurse, her tone calm but firm. "Big night, huh, sir? Next time dance on the floor, not the sidewalk." The man squinted at her, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "Are you an angel?" "Nope, I'm human," Eleanor replied flatly. "But I have coffee," which is close. Alexander caught himself laughing. No PR script, no champagne smiles, just a doctor treating a drunk, scraped-up man as if he were still a person. Minutes later, chaos rolled in. A 70-something woman clutching her chest, face pale. The monitor beeped faster. "EKG, now!" Eleanor snapped, voice shifting in a heartbeat. 2 liters of oxygen. Labs. "Ma'am, look at me." Deep breath in and out. The woman trembled. Eleanor leaned close, holding her hand. "Don't worry, I can fix your heart. Except for heartbreak. That one takes a lot of chocolate." The woman chuckled through her pain. Small but real. Alexander felt warmth bloom in his chest. In seconds, Eleanor had given her something to hold on to besides fear. The automatic doors kept sliding open and shut. A teenager with a swollen arm from skateboarding, scowling like the world owed him. "Don't move it," Eleanor said, reviewing his x-ray. "Good news, you'll skate again." "Bad news, I'm writing you a helmet reminder." "Lame," the boy grumbled. "Lame is being saved by a mustard-stained hot dog," Eleanor deadpanned. "Helmets are cool." Alexander smiled again. Here, solutions came in a language everyone understood. gentle, witty, but backed with skill. Then came a little girl, face flushed, eyes brimming, lips trembling. Eleanor tied back her messy hair, softly humming, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," with random Vietnamese words thrown in, which was oddly charming. While the nurse took her vitals, the child stopped crying, gaze fixed on Eleanor's hand swaying like magic. "You did amazing," Eleanor praised, handing her a dolphin sticker. "Here you go, little warrior." From behind the glass wall, Alexander laced his fingers together. For the first time, he saw her world from the edge. Chaotic but rhythmic, tense but tender, exhausting but never without hope. She was the one pulling the blanket, again and again, covering strangers without complaint. Half an hour later, an unhoused man was wheeled in. The smell of sweat and streets clung to him. Someone wrinkled their nose. Eleanor only said, "Here's a warm blanket," and tucked it around him, pouring water, asking his name. Not sir, not anonymous. "What's your name so I can write it down nicely on your chart?" she asked. Alexander saw the man's rough hand tremble, stunned by the simple act of being asked his name. Not everyone hears their own name every day. Something lodged in Alexander's throat. On his spreadsheets, people were rows and columns. Here, people had names. He glanced at his watch. 50 minutes left. He stood, fetched himself some water, then returned to the hard chair. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Board meeting. Docs sent. He typed back, "Okay," and stopped. For once, no more words were needed. Eleanor appeared beside him, almost out of thin air. "Still got coffee?" "Half a cup," Alexander lifted it. "You?" "Empty, but I'll live." She sank into the chair, body melting into it. "You actually stayed." "I told you I'd wait," he said simply. She turned to him, eyes steady. "Waiting for the coffee, or waiting to see if I trip over someone?" "For you." His voice didn't flinch. A beat of silence. Eleanor cleared her throat like she'd swallowed candy wrong. "Oh, well, thanks." She popped back up. "I've got 40 minutes left. If you get bored, just go. I won't grade you." "I'll stay," he replied, surprising even himself with the firmness in his tone. 2 more cases passed. A young woman arrived mid-panic attack. Eleanor took her aside and taught her box breathing. 4 counts in, hold for 4. 4 counts out, hold for 4. "Like leveling up in a video game," she said. "Each round, your heart calms down." The woman looked at her as if seeing land after drifting at sea. An old man with chronic headaches, which turned out to be 7 cups of black coffee a day. Eleanor scribbled on paper. "Emergency coffee detox protocol. Day 1, 6 cups." The man gaped, then burst out laughing. "All right, Doc." Alexander saw her turn prescriptions into jokes, and somehow, into trust. Finally, the PA system dinged softly. End of shift. Eleanor peeled off her gloves, washed her hands longer than usual, as if rinsing away the night but keeping the laughter. She stepped into the waiting area, finding Alexander standing, posture stiff. Plastic chairs spared no one. "You're still here," she said, half surprised, half pleased. "I promised you coffee." He held up a fresh paper cup bought from the hospital cafe. This time, right order, less sugar, more milk, cinnamon on top. "I asked the nurse." Eleanor laughed, taking it. "Not bad, businessman. You learn fast. Walk a bit?" Alexander gestured toward the sliding doors. Outside, dawn was brushing the sky, the city dozing under tired yellow lamps and a few early cars. They stepped out onto the hospital steps. The cool pre-dawn air kissed their faces, heavy eyes lifted by quiet smiles. Eleanor sipped, warmth curling through her fingertips. "Your night was," Alexander searched, "insane." "Yeah," she nodded, "but I love it. Here, every day is a chance to do something small. Lay a blanket, ask a name, crack a joke. Enough small things added up. Sometimes they save people. And sometimes they save the one watching," he added, his gaze steady on her. Eleanor glanced sideways, voice soft as breath. "You're still the sleep-averse patient, remember?" "Remember," Alexander smiled, "but tonight I learned how to wait." That's the hardest skill, she mused. Maybe. His eyes dropped to her sneakers, a bit of dried blood on the toe. Do you ever get scared? Of course, she answered instantly, but fear doesn't stop you from doing the right thing. Alexander swallowed back words. In her world, the right thing wasn't in balance sheets. It was in holding a hand, saying a name, standing by someone mid-panic. A breeze passed. Eleanor shivered. He instinctively shrugged off his jacket, offering it. Don't, she shook her head. You'll get cold. I'm fine, he said, and for once meant it. Coffee's done. She lifted the empty cup, smiling. Go home and sleep, patient. And you? Shower, sleep, dream about hot dogs, she winked, half teasing, half true. They lingered a minute more, silent as the city breathed slowly and deeply. Somewhere a siren wailed once, then cut off. The sky was paling. Thank you for letting me stand at the edge, Alexander said quietly, realizing for the first time that he felt complete without being at the center. You're welcome, Eleanor replied. But next time you invite me for coffee, don't do it on shift. I don't like making you wait forever. I can wait, he said, sincerity startling even himself. Eleanor laughed, then headed down the steps. See you around, Alexander. See you, Doctor. Hayes. He watched her cross the lot, slip into her old Honda, and vanish into the empty road. Only then did Alexander turn back inside, hands in his pockets, whistling a tune he couldn't name. 2 hours of waiting had given him more than a date. It had given him a glimpse of a world he hadn't known he needed. And that night, for the first time in years, when Alexander hit the bed, he fell asleep like an ordinary man. No emails, no charts, no nightmares. Just the lingering scent of coffee and one simple thought. Tomorrow, he wanted to see that smile again. Sundays were when the city breathed more slowly. Sunlight spread soft across the sidewalks, maple trees fanned out like giant parasols, and dogs tugged their owners along as if they'd been locked up all week by busy schedules. Alexander left the gym in a gray t-shirt, headphones slung around his neck, carrying a bag of warm baguettes from the French bakery downstairs. He was mentally scrolling through his to-do list, a modest 11 items, when he spotted a familiar figure at the corner. Eleanor, ponytail high, cream-colored sweater, blue jeans, her arms full of a huge bouquet of sunflowers. She stopped in front of an antique shop, gazing at a wall clock as if it might whisper its own love story to her. Alexander slowed down. He wasn't sure if he was smiling because he saw her or because Sunday had suddenly been given content. Dr. Hayes, he called, his voice unconsciously dropping as if he didn't want to shatter the morning calm. She turned, her eyes lighting up like someone had switched on an extra lamp. Alexander. She glanced at the bakery bag. Breakfast calories. How many? Enough for a normal person to be full and a CEO to feel secure. He lifted the bag. And you? Planning to open a flower shop? If shifts paid in flowers, I'd be rich by now. Eleanor laughed, then suddenly snapped her fingers. Oh, you waited 2 hours for me over coffee the other night. Let me pay that debt today, if you're free. Alexander checked his watch, then tucked it into his pocket. I'm free. That's the nicest thing I've heard all day. She winked. Come on, I know a little cafe. Hand-whipped cappuccinos, no Wi-Fi. Terrified yet? Terrified, he said, though his smile gave him away. The cafe was situated in a leafy alley, marked by a carved wooden sign and a bell that jingled when someone walked in. The air was thick with hand-roasted coffee, toasted almonds, and cinnamon, warm enough to loosen Alexander's shoulders. Inside, it looked like a stylish aunt's living room. Floral armchairs, foldable wooden tables, low-hanging amber lights. One wall was crowded with Polaroids of customers, laughing hard, laughing shyly, laughing mid-bite. My spot, Eleanor said, choosing a table by the window where sunlight dappled the wood. Here, nobody cares who you are, just what you want to drink. Refreshing, Alexander said, taking the seat across from her. I'll have what you're having. Risky. She grinned, ordering 2 cappuccinos and a plate of butter waffles. While she chatted with the owner, Alexander noticed how easily Eleanor made people relax, with a quick joke, an attentive glance. Not a resume skill, a kind of warmth that wrapped around people. Here, she slid him a hand-painted mug, a foam heart, a little lopsided. Imperfect hearts are the real ones. Professional motto? He asked, sipping. Strong but smooth, cinnamon-scented, warm as a blanket. Life motto. She rested her chin on her hand. So, how'd you grow up? Let me guess. Afternoon tea parties, horseback lessons, summers at the beach house, and a butler named Alfred? No, Alfred, Alexander chuckled. But the rest, not far off. Her brows arched, playful spark dimming when she saw his expression change. Alexander rarely spoke about his past. Not because of scandal, but because it was cold. Cold enough to swallow words. My house was big, he began slowly, as if finding his way through fog. The dining table was so long, you needed a bell to ask for salt. I had my own room early. My schedule was set by someone, I think it was my mother who hired them. What mattered wasn't feelings, but routine. Everything is boxed into time slots. 7 o'clock, breakfast. 8 o'clock, car. 9 o'clock, class. 4 o'clock, piano practice. 6 o'clock, dinner. 7 o'clock, languages. 9 o'clock, business books. Repeat. Eleanor remained quiet, letting his words sink in. One winter, Alexander said, eyes drifting to the sunlit window, I thought I'd go ice skating with my father. He said he had a board meeting, handed me a folder of finance terms to get familiar with. I was 10. My mother was busy with a gala. The house glowed, but it was silent. I set the folder down, went out back, skated alone on the thin ice of the pond, and fell. Barely hurt. But I remember the cold sinking into my bones. That cold stayed with me. Eleanor didn't say I'm sorry. She simply pulled the plate of waffles closer, broke off a piece, and set it in his hand. A quiet, this is warmer. Later, Alexander exhaled, I got very good at filing away feelings. People called it calm, rational. In boardrooms, it's a strength. At home, it turned me into matching furniture. Matching furniture, Eleanor repeated with a soft laugh. Too bad. I prefer people. I'm trying to prefer them, too. He looked at her, half teasing, half serious. They sat in silence a moment, spoons clinking faintly against cups. Outside, a dog battled a fallen leaf as if it were an arch nemesis. Inside, the cafe played an old autumn ballad. And you? Alexander asked. What was your noisy family like? Eleanor burst out laughing at the word noisy. Noisy in every sense. 4 sisters. Dinner was a football game. Whoever grabbed the mashed potatoes first won. My mom sang while cooking, but always made up lyrics. My dad told the same story 10 times, each time adding new dramatic details. Thanksgiving could mean a burnt turkey, and Christmas could mean tangled lights like my hair. But always fun, warm, loud. I learned to apologize for laughing too loud, then laughed again. Alexander pictured it. Clattering dishes, flying flour, offbeat music, a cat strutting across the table like royalty. He felt a tug of envy, an innocent kind he'd never let himself feel before. Do you get scared, he asked, in the ER when it's chaos? Of course, she said without hesitation. But in my house, whenever things went sideways, someone shouted, whose turn is it to hug? I brought that habit here. Not always literal hugs, though sometimes yes. Mostly people don't need a genius. They just need someone present. I try to be that someone. Alexander looked at her. You were there for me that night. Because you're human, she shrugged. Not because of who you are. Something in his chest melted, like ice under sunlight. They drifted into lighter talk. Eleanor hated mushrooms but loved mushroom sauce. Her life's contradiction, number 12. Alexander once failed an art class despite owning a priceless modern art collection. Contradiction number 34. They laughed, sipped, laughed again. Eleanor pulled out her phone, showing family photos. Her dad in a King of the Grill apron, her mom radiant with a ladle, 3 sisters making goofy faces, and her, blurry behind the camera, laughter practically audible through the pixels. Every Sunday night we have dinner together, she said softly. Anyone's welcome. Friends, neighbors, recovered patients, even the pizza guy once stayed. Whatever we cook, nothing is Instagram worthy, nothing neat, but always room for another chair. Alexander inhaled as if standing at a doorway, scented with fresh bread. He'd never thought of Sunday as having a shape. For him, it was just a day to prep for Monday. Eleanor tilted her head. Maybe what you need isn't more contracts, she said gently, but more warm dinners. The words landed like a spoon on wood, quiet, but echoing far. Alexander didn't joke back. He simply nodded, like someone who just heard exactly what he needed without knowing he needed it. Not tonight, she added quickly as if afraid to push. Whenever you want. No ceremony, just a meal. Loud, messy, happy. You can bring bread. I guarantee it'll vanish before you sit down. And mustard? He asked, and they both laughed, remembering the food truck. And mustard, she confirmed solemnly. A breeze stirred the curtains, coffee and cinnamon curling in the air like an invitation. At the counter, the barista played Billie Holiday. Outside, the triumphant dog paraded its conquered leaf. Alexander checked his watch, not for meetings this time, but to stretch the minutes before leaving. Can I walk with you a bit? You can. Eleanor slipped on a light jacket. But if you walk half a step faster, I'll diagnose you with control issue stride disorder. I'll adjust, he said seriously, making her laugh. They strolled down the alley, sunlight hopping across the steps. Eleanor talked about the farmer's market in the square, and Alexander confessed that the one time he tried cooking, he ended up with charcoal risotto. She pointed out a second-hand bookshop with old medical texts. He filed it away like a valuable contact. At the corner, she stopped. Thanks for listening. Not everyone has patience for rambling stories. Not rambling, Alexander shook his head. I think this is the important part I've been missing. Then take it back, she said, as simple as prescribing medicine. Start tonight, with someone. No antiques, no staging, just a table, 3 simple dishes, voices. Are you free tonight? He asked, then quickly added, no rooftop. Eleanor smiled, shaking her head. I'm on shift tonight, but next Sunday. Sunday, he repeated, tasting the word like something new. All right. They clinked empty cups as if shaking hands, then split ways. Alexander lingered, watching her shrink into the crowd, warmth replacing the chill in his chest. As he walked off, he wondered if he could draft a new kind of contract. Not between companies, but between 2 people. 1 warm dinner a week. Terms, laugh at least 3 times, tell 1 silly story, and do the dishes together. That, he thought, might be the first contract in his life he wanted to sign without a lawyer. And this time, he knew he'd chosen right. Still following the story? If this found you outside Soul Stories, welcome home. Comment below. What story do you want to hear next? Sunday night, the air was crisp. The city lit up like a stage. Eleanor stood in front of the mirror, eyeing the borrowed dress from her sister. It wasn't glamorous, just a simple black gown with a neat V neckline, the hem brushing her ankles. She drew a deep breath. This wasn't her world, but Alexander had invited her in a tone that allowed no refusal. Just a charity gala, no pressure. He arrived in a gleaming limousine, his tuxedo tailored to his broad shoulders, his hair combed sharp as if straight from a magazine cover. Eleanor teased with a grin, "You look like James Bond headed to the Oscars." Alexander only replied softly, pride glinting in his eyes, "And you're the reason I'm going." The hotel lobby glowed with crystal chandeliers, marble floors shining underfoot, and a string quartet weaving classical melodies into the air. Eleanor held his hand, feeling like a student who had wandered into an international summit by mistake. Sequined gowns glittered, smiles were razor sharp, and every greeting was laced with calculation. Alexander transformed the moment they crossed the threshold. She saw it immediately, the familiar mask, cold, composed, eyes sharp as blades. He shook hands, nodded, traded words in a language of finance and politics that felt like a foreign tongue to her. A silver-haired associate smirked. "Alexander, I heard you had some special care in the ER last week?" Alexander's reply was ice cold. "Work always comes before trivial matters." Eleanor froze. That night on the bridge, when she saved him, was that just a trivial matter too? She followed him from group to group, champagne glass in hand, smiling politely. But inside, the divide grew. Here, conversations revolved around deals, market shares, and numbers. No one asked if anyone had slept well or if they were doing okay. A woman in a crimson gown turned to Eleanor, eyes sweeping her from head to toe before pausing at her simple silver bracelet. "And what line of work are you in?" "Emergency medicine," Eleanor answered plainly. "Oh," the word stretched, tinged with surprise and a hint of pity. "How noble. Though I imagine it's exhausting." The velvet-wrapped dagger of condescension slid in effortlessly. Eleanor smiled back, but inside she wondered what she was even doing here. She glanced at Alexander. He was smiling smoothly, immersed in merger talk, perfectly at home in this glittering world. Under the blazing lights, he was once again the cold CEO the press described, a stranger, far from the man who'd laughed over a hot dog beside her at a food truck. After nearly an hour, Eleanor excused herself, claiming she needed to make a call. In truth, she stepped straight out of the ballroom, breathing in the cool night air. The yellow glow of the street lamps felt far easier to bear than the chandelier glare. She sent him a quick text. "I'm heading home early. Thanks for the invitation." Alexander read it just as he finished a short speech. Looking up, he couldn't see her anywhere. A wave of emptiness swept through him. On the ride back, Alexander sat in silence. The applause, the praise, the laughter of colleagues still echoed in his ears. But none of it mattered. The image that haunted him was Eleanor, standing in her simple dress, her lost expression among the glittering crowd. He realized the distance between their worlds wasn't about clothes or status. It was about perspective. To Eleanor, a smile or a saved breath of life mattered more than any business deal. For him, he'd drowned too long in numbers and a practiced mask of coldness. The gala ended in dazzling lights, but for Alexander, it was a dark turning point. He understood that if he wanted to draw closer to Eleanor, he couldn't just pull her into his world. He had to dare to step out of it. Monday, the city talked about nothing else but last night. Tabloids, business blogs, and even Twitter exploded with headlines. ER doctor attends gala with cold billionaire Alexander Pierce. Who is the mystery woman in the simple black dress? From ER to red carpet, the cold wolf's new romance? As if that weren't enough, paparazzi dug up a candid photo from a few days earlier. Eleanor and Alexander at a food truck, him wiping mustard off his shirt, her laughing uncontrollably. The picture went viral with the caption, "The Billionaire CEO's hot dog date." That morning, Eleanor walked into the ER and hadn't even taken off her coat when she heard giggles from a group of nurses. "Oh my God, our star has arrived." "Dr. Hayes, when are you signing up for a dating show? I vote you for The Bachelorette." One even held up a tabloid with Eleanor on the cover, standing beside Alexander. Eleanor snatched the paper, frowning. "This is ridiculous. I save lives. I'm not auditioning for The Bachelor." Her colleagues burst out laughing, but Eleanor's face flushed, a mix of anger and embarrassment. On Twitter, the hashtag Doctor and the CEO hit trending. Some posts were admiring. Finally, Alexander found his heart. Others were venomous. Obviously, she's a gold digger. Who leaves the ER to sit next to a billionaire? Eleanor scrolled, blood rushing to her face. She wanted to hurl her phone across the room. By noon, when Alexander called to check in, Eleanor cut him off. "You know what? I wasn't born to be the main character in some hashtag circus. I go to a gala with you, and now I'm a gold digger doctor. My colleagues are teasing me. My patients are staring. This isn't my life." Alexander was silent for a few seconds, his voice low and measured. "Eleanor, I never meant to put you in the spotlight. But once you step into my world, public opinion is always brutal." "Then I don't want to step into it," she shot back. "I don't need the spotlight. I just want to do my job and drink coffee after a shift without being photographed." There was a long pause, then she said softly, voice trembling, "I saved you because you're human, not because you're a CEO. But now it feels like the whole world only sees me through your lens." Alexander gripped the phone tighter. For the first time, he felt the cold not from a boardroom, but from the distance widening between him and her. The news, the hashtags, the whispers, it all swept through Eleanor's life like a storm, and her only instinct was avoidance. In the days that followed, Eleanor buried herself in shifts. She signed up for extra hours, volunteered to cover for colleagues, and did anything to keep her mind off the billionaire CEO. Her phone buzzed nonstop, Alexander Pierce glowing on the screen, yet she quietly pressed decline every time. At the hospital, she still smiled at patients, still cracked jokes while placing IV lines. "Don't worry, I won't turn you into a vampire." But inside, the weight lingered. She didn't want to become a sideshow in the tabloids, and even less the punchline of a gold digger label. Meanwhile, Alexander returned to his 50th floor office. Schedule packed from dawn till night. His partners sighed in relief. Pierce is back. He sat in the glass-walled boardroom, thick contracts spread before him. But every time he turned a page instead of numbers, he saw Eleanor, messy hair, hot dog in hand, laughing so hard when mustard splattered his shirt. Financial reports had never felt so meaningless. One evening he joined fellow CEOs for dinner. White tablecloths, Bordeaux poured into crystal glasses, Wagyu beef as the centerpiece. Conversation buzzed with stocks, real estate, and billion-dollar mergers. Alexander sat silently, cutting into meat that melted on his tongue, yet it tasted of nothing. He remembered the food truck outside the hospital, the wobbly plastic chair, the cheap hot dog, and Eleanor with a smile that had made a freezing night feel warm. He pushed his plate aside, realizing no million-dollar dinner had flavor without her. Late that night, he stood at the penthouse window, looking down at the city. Yellow lights scattered like stars, cars crawling like toy figures along the avenues. Once, it all symbolized power. Now it looked like a still painting, beautiful but cold. He tapped his phone screen. Eleanor's name still glowed in his contacts. He typed 2 words, "I miss you," then deleted them. He didn't want to intrude, didn't want to push her further away. Alexander Pierce, the man who once thought he had everything, felt the wealth around him hollow for the first time. And in that emptiness, there was only one face he wanted to see, one voice he longed to hear. Sunday, the community first aid class gathered in the church hall. White walls, bulletin board plastered with flyers. Coat drive for the homeless. Weekend market. In the middle of the room lay training mannequins, neatly arranged. Eleanor, in a hospital t-shirt and ponytail, was packing bandages into a box when she heard murmurs at the door. The class turned. Alexander stood there, no suit, no tie, just a gray t-shirt, jeans, and a large first aid kit in hand. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, the cold billionaire is smiling." Eleanor raised a brow. "What are you doing here?" "Late to class," he said, a little hesitant. "Still room, teacher?" "Yes, for those who behave," she teased. Then to the class, "No filming or photos, please. Respect the lesson." To Alexander, "Back row. Watch me, then copy." "Got it." He raised a hand like a rookie student. Eleanor clapped her hands. "All right. Saving lives isn't as hard as it sounds. The key is staying calm. If someone collapses, call for help first. Then place your hands in the center of your chest and press down. Steady, a bit strong, to the beat of a fast song. Don't hunch. Use your whole body." The room filled with the thunk-thunk of springs in the mannequins. Alexander knelt, placed his hands properly, pressed 1, 2, 3, a little too hard. The dummy cracked with a dry pop. Eleanor leaned over, tilting her head. "Not bad. You could save a life, if you don't break every rib first." "Bones heal," Alexander muttered. "Dead people don't." He paused, realizing how blunt it sounded. "Exactly." Eleanor's voice softened. "Better sore than silent." Next, she demonstrated the recovery position. Alexander followed a little clumsily, nearly rolling the mannequin right off the mat. The class burst out laughing. Eleanor caught it in time and shot him a look. "Hey, don't kill my dummies. I only have 4. "Sorry," he raised his hands in surrender, grinning along with the others. An hour passed quickly with bandages, ice packs, triangular slings, peppered with Eleanor's humor to lower the heart rate. A middle-aged man clutched a swollen ankle using an avocado. Eleanor deadpanned, Then stop making guacamole with it. I'll wrap it instead. The room roared. Alexander laughed too, his face loosening in a way it hadn't for years. During role play, Alexander's group staged a stranger collapsing on the street. He called 911, checked responses, started compressions, sweat beading, but his hands were steadier now. Eleanor crossed her arms, teacher-like, nodding in approval without giving him the satisfaction of praise. When the final bell rang, the class erupted in applause. A boy of 12 tugged Alexander's sleeve. "Mister, you were kinda cool." His mother yanked him back. "Don't ask for a picture." Eleanor cut in. "No pictures, but he can carry chairs." "On it," Alexander said, hefting a stack as if he did it every day. By evening, the churchyard was breezy, chatter lingering as the class dispersed. Alexander carried the supply box to Eleanor's car. He opened the door for her, hesitating. "Let me drive you home." "No need." Eleanor shook her head, hugging the box. "I'm going to my parents tonight." "Sunday?" Alexander asked, already picturing the noisy dinner table, golden lights, and the smell of food. His pulse quickened. "You said anyone could come." Eleanor squinted. "You sure? It's loud, messy, no fine wine, no fancy show, and there's a dog. I can wash dishes, and I want to go." She hesitated, then smiled. "All right, but don't call my mom Madam President. And when my dad tells a story for the 10th time, you'd better laugh like it's new." "Deal." "No lawyers required," she quipped, shutting the trunk. "Follow me." The Hayes suburban home was painted soft yellow, with a front porch swing creaking gently and warm string lights wrapped around the railings. On the lawn, kids chased each other while a golden retriever, Pudding, charged out barking toll fees at the gate. From inside drifted the scents of garlic butter, roasted meat, and cinnamon, enveloping new arrivals in a warm embrace. "I'm home," Eleanor called. The door swung open. Mrs. Hayes, apron printed, "Stirring up trouble since 1989, ladle in hand, hair loosely tied." "Ellie, oh, and this is—" Her eyes flicked to Alexander, pausing only half a beat. "Aren't you that man from the papers? You're even better looking in real life. Come in before the stew gets mad." Mr. Hayes followed, apron reading, King of the Grill, tongs waving. "Another eater." "Welcome. What's your name?" "Alex, wash up and help me flip skewers." Alexander froze on the threshold. He'd never been welcomed so casually. No Mr. Pierce, no calculated handshake. Just come inside. Pudding sniffed his shoes, approved his entry, then bounded back to Eleanor. "Don't be jealous," she patted the dog's head. "He's a friend." In the kitchen, Eleanor's three sisters created their brand of chaos, one singing off-key while chopping salad, one salting the sauce, one rocking a baby while jingling a rattle. Alexander was swept into the whirlwind like an actor dropped on stage without a script. Mrs. Hayes shoved a towel into his hands without asking. "You're too tall, blocking the cupboard. Move left." "Good. Now stir this stew clockwise. Counterclockwise, and we fight." He obeyed. The stew bubbled, rich with beef, onions, and carrots, an aroma that tugged at some forgotten idea of home. Mr. Hayes leaned in, handing over tongs. "Flip these skewers evenly. Don't be afraid to get messy. Rule here is, burn it, eat it yourself," he roared with laughter. Alexander chuckled too, fumbling but learning quickly. "What's your job?" Mr. Hayes asked between flips. "Investments," Alexander answered. "Invest in what?" "Lately, patience." The word surprised even him, coming out so naturally. "Good man," Mr. Hayes clapped his shoulder. "Patience pays compound interest." Mrs. Hayes passed him an apron reading, "Kiss the cook," or at least compliment him. The whole family laughed as Alexander Pierce, the infamous cold wolf, stood in a wrinkled apron, dutifully stirring stew like a rookie chef. "Alex," one of the sisters called, "grab the baking tray, on the shelf, next to Mom's secret spice box. But don't open that. Whoever opens it has to get married." The room erupted in laughter. He fumbled the cupboard instead, rattling dishes. Eleanor darted in, catching them. "Here, let me." She was close enough for him to catch the faint scent of soap and cinnamon. Amid the chaos, they paused just a beat too long, warmth flickering between them. Dinner rolled out like a parade. Grilled meat, mashed potatoes, corn salad, warm bread. Eleanor pointed, teasing, "The bread you brought, right? Let's pretend, and the legendary stew." Hands clasped, the Hayes family gave their trademark thanks. Thanks for whoever took the trash out. Thanks because pudding didn't steal food. Thanks for one more seat at the table. Alexander's turn came. He looked around. Golden light, overlapping laughter, kids stealing spoons, Mrs. Hayes singing the wrong lyrics, Mr. Hayes launching into the exploding grill story. Everyone groaned, 10th time, yet all laughed. Alexander's voice was husky. Thank you for letting me sit here. It's been a long time since my Sundays had shape. The table went quiet for a beat, then hummed with warmth. Mrs. Hayes set her hand on his, firm and kind. There's always a seat for you, Alex. The meal began. Alexander ate faster than usual, not out of hunger, but because it was delicious. He laughed when pudding rested his chin on his lap, begging. He served salad to Mrs. Hayes, poured water for Mr. Hayes, and claimed the burnt skewer in true house law. His phone buzzed with emails and board alerts. He slid it face down, pushing it out of reach, like shoving away an old version of himself. Afterward, nobody asked who's on dish duty. Everyone simply stood. Alexander rolled up his sleeves, tied the apron, and took his place at the sink. Eleanor washed, he rinsed, soap bubbles rising like tiny clouds. I told you I brought 2 hands for dish duty, he murmured. And I acknowledge it, Eleanor replied softly. They didn't look at each other, but their smiles matched. Mr. Hayes walked by, patting Alexander's shoulder. Next week, come early. I'll teach you my grill sauce recipe. Secret is... There is no secret. Noted, Alexander said solemnly, like taking board minutes. Mrs. Hayes handed him a brown paper bundle of apple pie. For late-night hunger. And remember to sleep, all right? Mr. Hayes slipped him a tiny jar of cinnamon. For warmth, but don't dump the whole thing. Everyone laughed. On the porch, string lights swayed in the evening breeze. Eleanor walked him to the gate. You survived well, she teased. Didn't spill the stew, didn't burn the skewers, just dropped one ladle. Acceptable statistics, he replied, deadpan but eyes smiling. Thank you for letting me come along. Not come along, Eleanor corrected. Step in. He nodded, chest loosening as if shedding a suit jacket. Can I come back next Sunday? There are conditions. She was mock serious. Laugh at least 3 times, tell one silly story, and do the dishes. Deal. He half extended his hand like signing a contract, then tucked it awkwardly back into his pocket. Eleanor chuckled, gently tapping the back of his hand. They stood in a quiet moment, listening to the breeze and pudding sneezing. As Alexander stepped down the porch, he turned back. Oh, staying alive. What? CPR. I'll remember that rhythm, just in case. I need it for someone, or myself, half joke, half truth. Eleanor shook her head, smiling like sunlight. Just don't use it on my mom's apple pie. He laughed, sliding into his car. The smell of wood smoke and cinnamon clung to his shirt. Outside, the city was still loud, bright, extravagant. But tonight, Alexander carried something new. The afterglow of a warm dinner, laughter mingling with clattering dishes, and a fresh feeling that when the world turned cold, he now knew the way back to warmth. Driving home, he whistled to the beat of Staying Alive, smiling at the thought. Apparently, learning to be ordinary starts with waiting 2 hours, pushing compressions to the right rhythm, and washing dishes in a noisy kitchen. And he was ready to keep learning. The press room that morning was packed. Flashbulbs popped nonstop, reporters buzzing like a hive gone mad. On stage, Alexander Pierce stood tall in a perfectly cut navy suit, but his expression was unlike the cold mask he usually wore. His eyes were bright, steady. A female reporter held out a microphone. Mr. Pierce, there have been many rumors about your relationship with Dr. Eleanor Hayes. Can you confirm them? The room held its breath. This was the moment the public had been waiting for. Alexander drew a deep breath, then smiled. A real smile. Yes, he said clearly. She's the one who saved me. Not just from death on that bridge that night, but from the cold man I used to be. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed wildly. He continued, voice deep and resolute. Eleanor never came to me for money, fame, or power. She stopped in the middle of the night on an empty bridge, simply because she saw someone in need. And from that moment, I knew I couldn't see life the same way again. He paused, gaze locking straight into the lenses, as if breaking through every wall of rumor. I want to be with her, whether it's in an ambulance, at a shabby food truck, at a glittering gala, or at her family's noisy dinner table. That's where I found myself, and where I found happiness. Silence fell. Then slowly, applause spread across the room. A few reporters lowered their cameras, smiling. The clapping grew, rolling through the hall. Alexander lifted his head high, but inside he held only one wish: that Eleanor hear these words, believe them, and know he was no longer afraid to say his feelings out loud. 12 hours of back-to-back shifts had left Eleanor's eyelids heavy as sandbags. She peeled off her gloves and folded her white coat into her bag. Out in the hallway, nurses' shoes slapped the floor. Alarms shrieked, but her shift was finally over. One step through the hospital doors and she would breathe free air again. And there he was, waiting. Alexander, not in a suit, not with the cold mask. Just him, in a dark overcoat, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor arched a brow, but the corner of her mouth betrayed a curve. "Picking you up." He held out the cup. "Less sugar, more milk, with cinnamon. Just the way you like it." She accepted, surprised at how perfectly it matched her taste. "You remembered." "I remember everything," he said softly. They walked side by side down the street toward the city center. Without planning it, they stopped at the bridge, the very place where it all began. The night wind blew cold. The river shimmered silver. Eleanor shivered slightly, clutching her coffee for warmth. Alexander looked at the railing, remembering the night he collapsed. His heart beat faster now, not from weakness, but from what he was about to say. "That night I was lost. If you hadn't stopped, I might not be here. But the truth is, you didn't just save me from dying. You saved me from the cold shell I used to hide behind." Eleanor turned toward him, about to speak, but he stepped closer, his eyes lit beneath the bridge lamps. "This time I'm not collapsing." His voice was steady, deep. "I'm waiting for you. Really waiting. Let me be by your side, whether it's in an ambulance, at a food truck, or at a noisy Sunday dinner. Anywhere you are, that's home." The wind whipped past, carrying warmth from the coffee cup. Eleanor looked at him, her heart aching in the sweetest way. The pressure and rumors seemed to fade. She gave a small laugh, shaking her head. "You really are the most stubborn, sleep-deprived patient I've ever had." "And the only patient who wants to stay with his doctor," he replied, eyes never leaving hers. They stood in silence for a moment, only the river's lap filling the air. Eleanor whispered, "Maybe. It's time I gave you a chance." Alexander leaned slightly closer, asking with his eyes. Eleanor didn't turn away. She rose on her toes and their lips met, tentative, trembling, but certain. The river lapped. The night wind bit cold, but in that moment, everything melted away, leaving only the warmth between them. A year had passed since that fateful night on the bridge. The city was still bustling, the hospital still lit through the night, and the high-rise boardrooms still piled with contracts. But in Eleanor and Alexander's lives, one thing had changed. They no longer walked alone. Friday night after her shift, Eleanor left the hospital with coffee stains on her shoes and her hair tied up in a messy knot. At their familiar street corner, the food truck glowed warm yellow, the scent of fries filling the air. Alexander was already waiting, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie abandoned in the car. He handed her a soda and a large bag of fries. "Let me guess. You booked a rooftop table and got turned down again?" Eleanor teased. "Correct," Alexander grinned. "Rooftops don't serve fries like these." They sat on a wobbly plastic chair, sharing hot fries, watching the crowd pass by. No paparazzi, no pressure. Just them and the sweetness of simplicity. Alexander bit into a fry, then looked at her. Who needs $1 million dinner when I have fries and you? Eleanor mock glared. Keep talking like that and I'll put you on a month-long salad diet. I'd rather eat fries forever, he shot back, making her laugh. On Sundays, Alexander drove Eleanor back to her family's yellow house in the suburbs. Pudding, the golden retriever, barked wildly, then wagged his tail. Her parents welcomed him with laughter and their signature stew. Her sisters still joked, argued, and over-seasoned food. But Alexander was no longer the awkward outsider on the porch. He rolled up his sleeves, wore the kiss the cook apron, rinsed lettuce, flipped skewers, and even fought for the burnt pieces by house law. At the table, laughter overlapped. Stories were retold for the 10th time, and kids ran in circles. And Alexander, the man raised in a cold mansion, now felt like he truly belonged in this warm chaos. That night after dinner was cleared, Alexander took Eleanor onto the porch. String lights twinkled, the night breeze was soft, and the scent of apple pie lingered. His hand trembled slightly as he held hers, but his gaze was steady. Eleanor, you brought me from that dark bridge to this warm table. You made me laugh. You made me believe in the small things. And I know now, I don't want to just be a Sunday guest anymore. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. Inside was a simple ring, glowing under the golden light. Will you marry me? I promise, whether it's in an ambulance, at a food truck, or in this noisy kitchen, I'll always be the one doing dishes with you. Eleanor covered her mouth, eyes shimmering. Then she burst into laughter through tears. You're proposing to me with a dishwashing vow. Yes, Alexander smiled, because that's the most important commitment. Then, Eleanor held out her hand for the ring. I say yes. Pudding barked loud approval, while from inside came a chorus of, woo! The family had clearly been eavesdropping. Months later, in her parents' sunflower-filled garden, they married. No glamorous guest lists, no fireworks, just family, friends, and laughter. Eleanor wore a simple white dress, hair tied low, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Alexander wore a tuxedo without a tie, eyes never leaving her. When the pastor asked, "Do you take?" Alexander answered immediately, "Yes." When it was Eleanor's turn, she winked and said quickly, "Yes." The crowd erupted in laughter at the fastest vows ever, and in the garden, their kiss sealed not just a wedding, but a new life together. 1 year later, then 2, Eleanor was still the ER doctor with worn shoes, Alexander still the busy CEO. But on Friday nights, they always met at their food truck, sharing fries. On Sundays, they were at the Hayes' noisy dinner table, fighting for burnt pieces, laughing when her dad told his story for the 10th time. Alexander had once thought happiness lived in contracts and numbers. Now he knew happiness was sitting beside Eleanor on a rickety plastic chair, sharing hot fries, listening to her laugh. And for them, that was their happily ever after. Sweet, simple, unmistakably American, and served with extra crispy fries.